The federal debt ceiling. It's a looming catastrophe. It's a bargaining lever. It's a crisis averted. It seems like a never-ending cycle. So what is the federal debt ceiling anyway, and why should you care about it? Let's start with how it works. The government spends more money than it takes in. It's done this off and on since the country was founded. But now it's doing it more than ever. In each of the past 4 years, it has spent over $1 trillion more than it took in. In February of this year, it is projected to collect about $215 billion in revenues and pay out $460 billion. The government borrows to make up the difference by selling bonds to investors around the world. Nearly half of that debt is now held by foreigners, much of it by Japan and China. Each month that the government spends more than it brings in, that is, each month that the government runs a deficit, it has to borrow. The sum of all this borrowing is the federal debt. It's been growing, both in dollars and measured against the size of the economy. Until World War I, Congress had to vote each time the Treasury needed to borrow money. To give the Treasury more flexibility, Congress switched to setting a ceiling on the debt in 1917. When the debt bumps up against that limit, Congress, often with a lot of shouting and bargaining, votes to lift the ceiling. And that is where we are now. The government hit the $16.4 trillion federal debt ceiling on December 31st, so Congress suspended the ceiling, allowing the Treasury to borrow what it needs, but only through May 19th. Well, you have to understand the debt ceiling is a strange thing. First, Congress votes to spend money the government doesn't have. Then it votes a second time to allow Treasury to borrow that money so it can spend. Refusing to raise the debt ceiling does not cut spending. It's like refusing to pay a credit card bill for stuff you've already bought. But because failure to raise the debt limit could be so devastating, Congress often does use it to force the president to do things he's reluctant to do. Nobody really knows. The Treasury hasn't been in precisely this position before. But here are some rough guesses. When the Treasury faced similar circumstances back in 2011, it contemplated paying as many bills as it could each day with the cash it had on hand, delaying payment on the rest. Bills would be paid basically in the order in which they arrived. The longer the delay in raising the debt ceiling, the more bills would pile up. Physicians who rely on Medicare payments to make payroll, seniors who pay rent with Social Security benefits, or soldiers waiting for paychecks would be forced to make do without their money for some time. Another option would be for the Treasury to prioritize payments, choose some bills to pay on time and others to delay. But it's unclear whether this is legal or logistically possible, given the volume of bills the Treasury receives each day. Nor is it clear whether the Treasury could or would pay interest on the national debt before paying everyone else. Any delays in paying interest would endanger the government's credit rating and shake confidence around the world in the ability of the U.S. government to manage its finances. That could lead investors to demand higher interest rates for U.S. Treasury bonds, which would cost American taxpayers billions of dollars over time. Those are the stakes. And as the debt continues to rise, Washington faces a decision. Will it come to an agreement on taxes and spending? Will it actually do something to slow the buildup of debt? Or will the debt ceiling come back into the headlines, and with it the accompanying fear that the U.S. government won't be able to pay its bills?